Hi there, this video will describe how to take original motion capture data and retarget that onto a customized character and then get this into the Unreal Engine so we could use small clips of mocap in a loopable cycle action within a game. So what I've done is I am in the Unreal Engine and I have this Boris character that I've downloaded, and this is from the Epic Games Marketplace. This is the Paragon Boris character. It's free to download. Once you add it to your card or download it, then you can add it to your project. So I have a base 3D environment here, just a blank 3D template and our 3D map. And then I've imported in a couple other Paragon characters, but I've imported in this Paragon, or added to the project, and it pulls in the Paragon Boris character folder. Underneath that there is a character subfolder, and underneath that there's a heroes, underneath that there's Boris, and underneath that there's meshes, and then this pink one right here is the mesh that we're going to use. So this is a really detailed character, really interesting looking character, kind of a bigger grunt-like character. And what I want to do is, there's a lot of animations already on here, but I want to add my own animation. So there's some death that is already in here. There's an idol. I've already added a couple of mocap retargeted animations. So there's a chest beat, heavy headbutt, kicks, knees, and then some damage taken. So I've already done that, and I figured it might be a good idea, an interesting idea, to show how I've gotten to this point. So what I'm going to do is take this mesh, this character, export this character out, and then retarget it using modeling software, animation software. So what I need to export out from Unreal is the mesh. So it says skeletal mesh. And I'm going to right click on that, and I've already done this, but I'm going to show you the process. I'm going to right click on that skeletal mesh asset, go to Asset Actions, and Export. And I'm going to tell it where to export. Let's say just Boris export to. And when I do that, it's going to give me some options. Now, the FBX export that I'm using is FBX 2018. You can choose one of the other ones. But I'm going to use the 2018. And underneath Animation, I'm going to choose Export Preview Mesh, which is going to give me the option to be able to see the geometry as well. So when I click Export, that's going to create a FBX file for me that has the modeling, the skeletal system, and the skin weights. It is not going to export the textures. I don't need that for retargeting animation. Okay, so in Maya, I'm going to use Maya for the final retargeting on the character. When I open up that file, it's going to look like this. So the joints are going to come in for the character, but the geometry is not visible as default. So all you have to do is, there's a group up here, there's my joint system, and there's an LOD, level of detail group. And I'm just going to pull one of these out because there's LODs for the character, depending on how far away the camera is in game from the object. And I'm going to take this Boris LOD 0, and I'm just going to drag that out of that group, but still underneath the Boris main group. And that makes the character's geometry visible. Now, it doesn't matter that I can't see the textures or anything, but what does matter is that I can come in here to, let's open up some of these, open up the upper arm, and rotate the arm, and the skin weights are going to come with it. So I can still create animation with this character. So what I'm going to use is Maya's Human IK system, which is a character creation control setup. Before I go look at my mocap, I want to set up my character here. And I'll go through the process and I'll show you how what the final look of it is. So with my root joint selected, I'm going to come over here, Human IK. If you don't have Human IK visible, you can go to the Animation or Rigging tab and go to Skeleton, and then down here at the bottom it says Human IK. So under Rigging, Skeleton, Human IK. I'll open up this window on the right. And I'm going to click on Create Character Definition. So right now it's X, which means it's missing required bones. So I'm going to go to Shading and X-ray Joints so I can see the joints through the character. I'm going to need the geometry so I can know what to change as far as from a mocap to what the final character looks like. So what this is going to ask me to do is sync up the bones in my human IK system to the actual bones of the character. So let's start with the pelvis or the hips, and I'm going to double click on that in the human IK window, and then I'm going to come over here and visually click on the hips. And once it turns green, I know that bone and that human IK connection is set up properly. Let's click on the base spine, and I'm actually going to go over to the outliner. If you can't see the outliner, it's over here on the left. This button right here, and click on spine 1. And if I click on the little arrow above that, that's the other spine joints, and let's click on spine 2 and sync that to spine 2. And I can keep working my way up, but I think that's good enough for the spine. The head joint, and I'm going to go find the head. So actually I'm going to roll up the root and hold down shift and click that plus symbol. That opens up everything in the hierarchy. There's a lot of extra joints in here for the way the character is set up. So I want the head, so double click on the head over here, and then I'm going to click on the head joint for this character. I'm going to click on the neck and click on the very base neck, and then that's going to be neck 1. Okay. I can also come in here and do neck 2. There we go. And that'll be it for right now. We're going to come back to the arm, so I'm going to need to make an adjustment for the arm. Let's start with the left leg, left upper leg, and then let's go find the leg there, left thigh. So you have to find the right joint, but this one's going to be the left thigh. There you go. And it's going to go ahead and find it if the character is mirrored properly. It's going to find the right thigh. Let's do left lower leg, and then do the calf, and then left foot. And there's a heel, but we're going to do the foot joint for that. Okay. Other things like fingers we can also sync up as well. Alright, so the character is facing the forward z-axis. For human IK, the character has to be facing the forward z-axis, and the arms need to be parallel to the x-axis. So x-axis is this way, horizontal. So the arms actually need to be rotated up. So if I select both of the shoulders and rotate them out, the arms need to be as parallel as we can get them. So I can go to the front view and turn on X-ray joints again and rotate this up as much as we can to try to get them straight. If I go to look at the channel box, I can also come in here and zero out the other two values, so 0, and we'll do 0, and I think I'm going to need around a -19 value there. That should be pretty good. Then I'm going to go to the elbows, and let's put 0 for the rotator of the elbows. Makes the elbows straight. So we'll do the same thing here, 0 for elbows. Whoops. And then the wrists, we're going to try to zero them out. For this character, it's really going to be a -90, and then 0, 0. Same thing over here for this wrist, -90, 0, 0 for the rotates. So the arms need to be in a T-pose for the human IK system to work. So now let's go left click on the left arm and select the left arm. There we go, and it should do the right arm. And left lower arm, and select the left lower arm, and then left wrist and select the wrist. There we go. So once we see the entire body is set to green, we could do our root joint, the reference, but that's not completely necessary for us. And we see a green checkbox, we are ready to create our character. In order to set up the mocap properly for this character to accept incoming animation from another character, we have to define the character skeleton and then create the character node. So if we click the lock button, that allows us to then have controls that are created. So then we can come up here and do create control rig, and this button right here, and that'll create a control system for us. And if I was hand animating, this would give me the option to kind of come in here and hand animate the control rig. So that works for us. Let's go ahead and rename this. So I'm going to click on the blue button and choose rename character, and we'll say Boris character. All right, we'll click OK. All right, so this character from Unreal is now ready for us to accept incoming mocap. Let's just go ahead and save this so we don't lose it. Boris characterized 2, since I already got one that says characterize in there. There you go. Alright, so we have to set up the character. We could have done this in the next software that we'll get to here in a second, but I'm going to be doing the fine-tune animation adjustments in Maya, so that's why I wanted to do it in here. So, I've recorded motion capture data which is live action motion from an actor that's digitized into a digital skeleton. And for this clip, this is just going to be idle actions. So these are just a bunch of different idle motions, swaying, heavy breathing, hurt idles, and things like that. So this is the incoming motion capture data saved as an FBX file that shows me my skeletal joint data. I actually need to characterize this as well. I could do this in Maya as well, but I figured I'd show you MotionBuilder and how this workflow can work in MotionBuilder as well. So we need to characterize this, and then we'll save this out, and then import this into Maya. So with my character, I need to select the pelvis. I need to select all of my children joints and zero out the rotates. So that way my character is at a full T-pose. So I'm going to right click in my scene on my base root joint, which is the hips. And we're going to choose, right click and choose select branches. That selects every joint. I'm going to get my rotate tool, and I need to hit F5, which will have a local rotate. F6 is global, F5 is local. So we want to make sure we're in local rotate. And then here are my three rotates over here. I'm going to type in 0 for all three of those. So 0 for X, 0 for Y, 0 for Z. And that should put my character at a perfect T-pose. So all my joints are at a T-pose, which now means I can add my character rig to this. So over here in the asset browser underneath resources, underneath templates, there's a characters. And what I want to do is drag this character node onto the hips. And this will characterize my motion capture source footage. So let's drag our character to the hips there, and it's going to ask me, do I want to characterize it? So I click yes. And this is a biped character, so we'll choose biped. And very similar human IK system comes up over here on the right. Everything is green because we're in a T-pose. And we created a character. So let's go ahead, and in the navigator over here, I'm going to right click on that and choose rename, and we're going to call this one source. So source. All right. So this is characterized so that we can, still the motion's there. If I drag in the timeline, I can see the motion. So now what I can do is take the big blue button, and I can bake that animation onto the control rig. Okay, so we'll do bake plot to control rig. And we'll do FK, IK, which is full body, forward kinematic, and inverse kinematic system. And let it build that. There we go. So now that animation is on the control rig. So in case I want to make adjustments to the motion, I can do that pretty easily. All right. In this clip, I actually have a lot more other takes or different animations from the mocap file, but I'm only just going to be exporting this idle one. If I have multiple takes, I would import them in all together like what I've done, and then export everything out as individual files. So this method will allow me to export this out and then open up this individual idle take in Maya so that I can retarget there. So we're going to do File and Save As. And let's see, I'll just put it in the same folder, so we'll say mocap idles take. There you go. I'm going to click Save, and then in my Save options, I'm going to uncheck the rest of my takes so that I'm only exporting the idle take. So just the idles take here. So then we'll do Save. Let that save it out. All right, so back in Maya, now I have an FBX file of that mocap idles take that I can import in. So we've saved our Boris Characterize file. It's a good idea to save before you do major things like importing other things in here. So let's roll up our root, and then I'm going to do File, Import. Then we'll go find our folder, mocap idles take, and then we'll import that in. This will take a couple seconds. There you go. So then that should not pull any geometry, but should pull the other character in here. So that way, the human IK character rig, similar to the Boris rig that we just created, is on my source character, and it's animating in the timeline. So we can see that rolling through. So the nice part about this is that in my human IK system, I have my Boris and I have my source. And then to retarget my Boris character to follow the animation of my source, we have everything set up properly. All you have to do is go to the source drop down, make sure character is set to Boris character, and then our source is going to be set to the source character. There you go. So we'll let it kind of repurpose that. Now if I go back and play from frame 1, now the Boris character follows the source target animation properly. So there are some things that we need to adjust because this Boris character is a much bigger character and wider stance character compared to what my actor was doing. So I'm not going to change too much with the original source, but I am going to be coming in here and adjusting the lean down is a little too far in some occasions, but it's doing pretty good overall. So we're going to make a couple adjustments here. Alright, so I would suggest saving again. So this time we're going to say Characterize and idles retargeted. So that way we're not losing our progress. Idles retargeted, let it save all that out. And then the next step is we're going to bake the animation from the Boris character onto the control rig of the Boris character. We're going to hide the source character's information and then use animation layers to make our adjustments and then export this out to the game engine. So with our Boris character selected in the human IK, the animation's following the source character right now. So baking the animation is the full retargeting process, and what that does is it takes the keyframes that it's using as a source and creates keyframes on the character rig for our Boris character. So make sure Boris character is selected, then the big blue button, bake, and bake to control rig. I'm going to bake to control rig so I can edit and animate the character control rig for the Boris character to make my adjustments. So let's do bake to control rig. You want to make sure your timeline is set to however many frames you want to bake, and then we'll do bake to control rig. So that has to play through the animation once. At any point, the software could potentially crash, so it's always good to save before you do these major things. So I'm going to let it run through the whole animation. Then after it's finished, it's going to bake all that motion onto the keyframes of the Boris character rig. It's going to put a keyframe on every frame. So then we're going to use animation layers in Maya to refine the motion, and then export smaller clips, smaller sections of this out so that it can be used in the game engine. So there's a lot of different idles in here. We'll just pick one for the example, and we'll export that one out. It's almost done here. Alright, so there we can see the keyframes are all on this Boris character. There's a big red blob, which basically means there's a keyframe on every frame. So I actually don't need my source character anymore. I can actually remove it out, but I'm just going to hide it for right now. So I'm going to select those source character nodes and hit Control H to hide those. Temporarily I want to hide my joints because I'm going to be keyframing and editing the animation on the control rig. So with the Boris character, I'm going to take that root and hide that. And if you can't see these, we're also going to make sure we have shading X-ray joints on. I think we did that earlier though. So that way we can see the controls no matter what angle we have. Alright, so now the animation is on every frame of the control. So if I drag this around, the animation is there. The source is now on the control rig, so it's not following any motion of the mocap data. So we're going to go to the channel box and layer editor. And I want to select my major controls. I don't need literally everything right now. I'm not going to make adjustments to everything, but I am going to select the pelvis, the 2 wrist arm controls, the 2 leg foot controls, the upper chest, and the head. Okay, those are the main IK-FK controls. Really the main IK controls. And in the channel box, underneath that is the layers panel. There's a display and anim layer. I've baked my animations onto the control rig, so that's on the base animation layer. In order to edit this and make my refinements, I want to create a new layer, which is going to be called really an adjustment layer. And this is the far right button. I want to have the controls I want to edit and adjust selected, and then I'm going to click on the far right button. So that creates a new empty layer, but what that does is it gives me a blank space to be able to edit and refine the animation. The animation is on the base animation layer, and then my anim layer 1 is going to be my refinement layer. And it's kind of like an override or an adjustment layer like in Photoshop. So let's scrub here. I think we're going to try to find the big breathing. There we go. There's some heavy breathing. So let's decrease our timeline so we can get to that point. There we go. So about to right there, 7:12. There we go. So that's a lot of breathing that's going on here. Maybe we'll do like 2 breaths or 4 breaths. We don't really need this much, but we are looking for as much as we can of a looping cycle as possible. There you go. So there's about 4. So let's say 6:38. Just trying to reduce it down. And then I'm going to look at the first and last frame and see if we can get a frame that's kind of close. And that's actually 3 breaths. We'll try to expand it out and do 4. There you go. So maybe 686. 686. Let's back it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we're really kind of down some here. Maybe 680. That's our starting point. I'm trying to look at the first frame and last frame, and it's not going to be fully perfect as far as looping, but we'll try to do as best we can. Alright, so what we want to do is the very first frame, I'm going to hit, I have these controls selected and hit the S key. And that creates a keyframe on this animation layer. And this is kind of like an override layer. And then on the last keyframe, I'm also going to hit the S key. And I'm going to make some adjustments to try to create a fully looping cycle. So I'm just going to go back and forth between the first frame and last frame and see what we can do to kind of adjust this some. So let's take that pelvis. And I do believe we need to kind of let's see, let's actually move it up a little bit, the entire character. So this will give us the option to kind of make an adjustment that will affect the character from there on out. So now it's higher. And then we're going to move this up higher a little bit. There you go. We also might need to move it up a little more, or forward. It's pretty good. Maybe rotate it down a little bit more. So I'm trying to match the position. I'm not trying to be too perfect, but match the position here so that each one of these is as close together, the first frame and last frame. Yeah, that's probably pretty close to what we can do here. Then we'll take the foot and try to match our foot position. Maybe we'll pull this one down a little bit. So this is just, we're trying to create a loopable animation as much as we can. There you go, that'll work for now. And let's try these two. That's pretty good. I don't think I'm gonna mess with that. Alright, so now let's look at the arms and see if we can try to match the arms a little bit. Which that's pretty good. That's not too bad. The actor here did a pretty good job of adjusting the body back and forth to original position. So that's always nice when the actor, your original mocap, does a pretty good job of getting back to looping. Alright, so I'm just going back and trying to make our adjustments. Pretty good. Alright, let's see what this arm's doing. I kind of don't like that original arm position, so we can go back and kind of make our adjustment here of what we want that to look like. Uh-oh, I did a play blast by accident. Stop that. Alright, that's pretty good. And maybe we'll move this up a little bit so the arm is bent some. There you go. So not exactly perfect, but pretty good. So we'll see what the head looks like there. So maybe we'll come back and make our slight adjustments. That's pretty good. And that was the neck adjustment. And then for the head, there we go. All right, so we got some pretty good breathing. Three, four. And what's nice about adjustment layers is that we can come in here and make our adjustments to what the arms are doing, so we don't have like clipping in the geometry. It's pretty good actually. But if I wanted the arms to be like larger in some areas, I can take my arms and kind of move them out. So maybe during some of this, the arm will kind of move around a little more. Maybe this arm will move out a little more as well. And it'll keep that motion, but it'll override and add that adjustment layer on top of it. Okay, so we're pretty good. Might need to make my adjustments here with what the wrist is doing. Move it out some. There we go, that's a little better. Just trying to match position between my two beginning and end there. That's pretty good. Alright, so that could be our process for kind of adjusting and saving animations. Now the last thing we're going to do is get this ready to export. So let's once again, let's save this so we don't lose our work there. And now that we have kind of our setup, this heavy breathing motion that we got going on pretty good, we can actually use bookmarks, so we can do this with the rest of the animation. We can time out other idles that we want to. But I like using bookmarks, so if I come over here and create a new bookmark, and I'm using Maya 2020, so this is a new feature in Maya 2020. And we can call this one heavy breathing idle. Heavy breathing idle. And I can add a color to this if I wanted to, like this, a green color. And I can say on frame 521, and then my end frame is 680. 680. Click create. And that saves this section, or just gives me a visual note that this section is my heavy breathing. Okay, and I can actually right click and choose bookmark manager, and I can see my heavy breathing idle is from frame 521 to 680. Okay, and I can go back and forth between different bookmarks. So bookmarks are really cool to be able to see, even in larger timelines, where your animations are. So let's do 680 again. There you go. Alright, so I've saved my work, and now I want to export this out. So say I'm ready to export this out. What I want to do first is bake the animation to the skeletal system, so that way I am just exporting the geometry and the skeletal system. The controls cannot go into an engine. So right now the animation is on the controls. So we want to go back to the Human IK window and go to Character, Boris Character, and go to the blue button, and this time we're going to choose Bake to Skeleton. And I need to make sure my timeline is set to the frames I want to bake, because it's only going to bake what your timeline is set as shows. So it just baked from frames 521 to 680. And now the animation is on the joint. So if I select a particular joint, the animation is on the joints now. Okay. So the animation is not on the control rig anymore. Alright, we can play the animation still runs. I can open up or turn on the visibility for my joints again. Okay, so now we're ready to remove out other things and get this set up. So we don't need ready for export. I'm going to remove out the Boris character and the source footage. So the Boris character controls all the character controls that we created, and the source footage. This is only when you're done animating everything. and after you have baked the animation. So animation is still there, so we've done it properly. Select joints and see that the animation on keyframe wise is on the joints. And now I need to kind of reset my Boris group node back to what it was so that when I export it, Unreal can recognize it the same way. So I'm going to drag the Boris LOD0 back underneath that LOD group. It's going to make it disappear, which is fine. But now I'm ready to export. So let's go to File, and I'm going to use the Game Exporter. So File, Game Exporter. And then with the Game Exporter, I can choose what frames I can export and give a specific name to those frames. So under the animation clips, I'm going to click the plus symbol, and we'll call this one idle. Let's see, Boris _ idle heavy breathing. And my frames once again are 521 to 680. That's what my timeline is set as now. Then I need to tell it a path, so let's go add this to the path that I have earlier. And my Boris animations here is my FBXs that I pulled into Unreal. So we'll choose that. And then we'll let it export. Alright, so this is going to export the geometry and the joints with the animation on the joints. Export successful. Alright, so there it is, Boris idle heavy breathing. And so let's go back into Unreal. So in Unreal, underneath the Boris, there's an animations folder that's already created. And these are the pre-created animations, and then I have a couple that I've also imported in from mocap as well. So I'm just going to take that Boris idle heavy breathing and drag that into that animations folder. You can also create a new folder if you want to. I'm going to create drag this into the animations folder, and that's going to import the animation into Unreal. There are a couple things I want to change. I don't want to create a new character and a new mesh from this, so I want to turn off import mesh. And with this Boris character, there's already a skeleton created. So I'm going to click on the none beside skeleton. I have a couple other ones in here, but I'm going to choose the Boris skeleton. So it's not going to recreate the new skeletal system. It's just going to add this animation to the existing skeletal system. And then under animation, I want to make sure I choose exported time. And that's it. Then I'm going to choose import all. Okay, there's a pretty short clip, so it shouldn't take too long to do that. So now if I double click on that animation clip, Boris idle heavy breathing, let's check to make sure everything comes in right. Looks like it's doing a pretty good job. It loops pretty well actually. 4 breaths, loops pretty well. Pretty heavy breathing. So this adds it to the existing Boris skeleton. So there's a skeleton, there's a mesh, and then here are all of our animations. So what we did today was the Boris heavy breathing. I have like a damage hit 1 we recorded, or damage hit 1, damage hit 2. This is a high knee, heavy right kick, heavy headbutt, and then taunt, like a chest beat. Let's go back to our heavy breathing. Alright, so that wraps up the process of getting a character exported out of Unreal to use for mocap, using Maya to set up the base Characterize setup, using MotionBuilder to retarget the incoming motion capture data, exporting that into Maya to retarget our Boris character on top of the source animation, also using Maya to clean up motion to add more keyframes to refine the motion, and then export a small section of our mocap out for use in a game engine with a cycle like a heavy breathing idle, and then how to import that back into Unreal. Alright, that's it for this video on how to take a character, retarget animations from motion capture, and pull them back into the Unreal Engine.